Time to get inspired and improve your yoga knowledge in English. You're listening to Your Yoga in English, a podcast for yogis and yoga teachers that speak English as their second or third language and want to practice or teach yoga worldwide. I'm Annie, the founder of Enga Unite, and here to guide you on the way to become the confident and knowledgeable English-speaking yogi you want to be. Hello, happy Thursday! Today we're going to speak about finding your voice as a new or multilingual yoga teacher. Yes!
Yay!
Oh my goodness. I'm so happy to see you!
It's so lovely to see you as well. It's been a while, hasn't it?
It has been. I really, for those that don't know, I'm going to Thomas's classes, but I'm in the middle of another teaching course and I haven't been able to for a long time, but I can't wait to go back.
Always such a pleasure to have you in, such lovely energy. It's one of those connections that's just really been lovely to come out of lockdown, isn't it? But,
yeah, absolutely.
I think we've had an opportunity to connect more with people that are not in our immediate vicinity. We always seem to connect with people that go to the same studios as we go to because, they're the people that we meet.
Mm-hmm. It's a whole new world that opened up to us, a whole new yogi world.
Yeah. All these people from all around the world. We always knew they were there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just didn't get a head around yet finding or encountering them. Today we're going to speak about finding your voice as a new or multilingual yoga teacher. And for me, Thomas, you are the greatest example to ask because your voice simply is amazing. I'm always in awe during and after the class. And you've got a lot of experience in this field trying to find your voice due to your background, which we're going to speak about. So first of all, maybe introduce yourself a little bit. Who are you?
My name is Thomas Thoroe, and I'm running Great Dane Yoga, so I suppose my yoga business, although I find it hard to think about it as, because it's really more about connecting with people. So as the name says, I'm originally from Denmark, and that was my first language. And I moved to the UK back in '94, where I trained to be an actor, and quite soon or very abruptly into my acting career as it was, I started having to deal with a lot of health issues, a lot of difficulties where I came across yoga by chance, and yoga was kind of part of my training as well. So I found yoga really helped me coping with all those things. When it comes to voice and when it comes to my voice background, it's one of the things that I hear a lot. I never used to think of myself as this guy with the voice because I was used to being the guy without a voice. I used to be the guy that never knew what to say, and when I did speak, my resonance would be really heady and my voice wouldn't be rooted, so it would be very kind of difficult to hear. I was bilingual and I kind of had this sort of thing between the languages that I found it very difficult to switch between the languages. I'm a little bit dyslexic. I would be all over the place and be searching for words and, sounding like I was all of a sudden speaking a language that was foreign to me. So through teaching and through the voice work and through kind of continuously putting myself in situations where I had to speak in public, I did work as an actor, and although I tend to favor the physical work, I quite often had to speak, and I ended up doing a lot of Shakespeare and big classical stuff, and I simply had to learn how to resonate, and I had to find ways of making my voice work. And then when I became a teacher, when I started transitioning my practice from being a yoga practitioner, using yoga as a tool, as a way of me enhancing my life and my connection to life, and to trying to communicate what my yoga or what I had learned through yoga to other people, I kind of felt I lost my voice all over again because all of a sudden I had this huge inferiority complex. I always say I started teaching in 2010, but in reality, the first 4 years, I I covered classes when my teacher forced me to, and she literally would kind of like say, well, okay, well, so I decided you're covering this class for me, and unless you really have something you can't get out of, you're doing it. And she would really be quite pushy to get in front of. But I was really, feeling I can't teach this thing. It's too. So I suppose that was the classical imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of new teachers and teachers in general deal with this. They feel like maybe they're not good enough. They feel as if they don't know what they're doing. What was it exactly that you were struggling with when you first started teaching?
Well, I think imposter syndrome has represented itself for me over the years in quite a lot of different ways. And it kind of, you overcome it, and then it comes back in a different guise. It's like all of our demons. We always think, yeah, I conquered this, and now, it's coming back. So the first thing I encountered when I first had done my first 200 hours, and at this point I've been practicing yoga for over 20 years. So I wasn't like a new practitioner. I wasn't new to yoga or to the theories or philosophies or all of these things, but I was very new to teaching and taking on that role. And I think because coming from this sort of like Western background that we're coming from, there's a little bit of a tendency that we have this hierarchy built into our brain, where if you're teaching something, you have to have some kind of expertise in it. And to me, that meant that if you're an expert in yoga, then you have to attain some kind of enlightenment, which at the time I still believed that enlightenment was kind of like this place that you arrive at, and all of a sudden all your problems disappear and you're like the Buddha and walking around. And of course, I hadn't achieved that, because that's not really what we do as humans. So I kind of like felt, what right do I have to talk about yoga? What right do I have to talk about? And my teacher was sort of like, well, you've been practicing for 20 years. What do you mean you don't have a right to talk about your experience with it? But I kind of like feel, well, I haven't attained this sort of like elusive goal or something. So that was my first thing. And then, of course, you become aware the more you work and the more you do these trainings. It's almost like every time you do a training, you leave it realizing, oh my God, there's just so much more to learn. And then you kind of like think, well, am I really ready to teach? Am I really ready to talk about these things where I just realized that there's actually a lot I don't understand yet. So I struggled a lot with that in the first 4 years of this sort of like being very reluctant to teach, and feeling that it wasn't my place to impose, my views, I suppose, onto other people. Which of course is not what we do as teachers, but that was my experience at the time, and it took me a long time to get my head around this sort of like thing that actually no. And I think it was actually another 200 hours teacher training where I finally got to a point where I sort of like thought, well, actually, it's okay to not have all the answers. And I started understanding in depth this thing that I kind of knew in theory, but it wasn't really absorbed into me, that a yoga practice is a communal thing, and we do it as a community. And the fact that you're the one leading the practice doesn't mean that you have any expertise at all. It simply just means that you're making suggestions to the people that have chosen to join you in that practice, and they are guiding themselves through that journey. I mean, once I started thinking about practicing in classes like that, there was such a huge weight off my shoulders, and I really started enjoying teaching. And I think that was when I started to find a little bit of a voice as a teacher. It was still difficult. If I planned too much, I would get stuck in what I planned, and if I planned too little, then I would get all, oh, well, I don't know what to say. And it, so a new area of things to overcome opened up for me after that.
I completely recognize myself, especially in everything that you're saying, but I do think a lot of people that have been trained to be teachers do recognize this. Is this feeling at the start like, okay, I have all this knowledge, but who am I to teach other people? And I really like what you said, that once you understand that you're just there to guide or make suggestions or show what's possible or give them maybe some inspiration to play with, it changes everything.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it is kind of yoga in itself, because this thing we do where we put ourselves, or say, oh no, but I can't do this, I can't share myself in this way, or I can't, it's kind of, it's a very egotistical thing. It's a very kind of protective of me, of my identity. And yoga, of course, it's kind of all about realizing and going beyond our identity, and realizing that we are and can be so much more than what we do. And I think a lot of work with identities have been very essential to me in those early years as a teacher, and also as I really started getting my grounding as a teacher and my confidence as a teacher. I felt I was doing a lot of Grotowski work, like theater work, and we were working with sort of like identity techniques where we would deconstruct our identities, in order as an actor to be able to more freely imagine being something different, and actually living that, not just feel that it was sort of like something we were putting on as a costume or a cloak, but actually being something. And that, to me, tied in with yoga really well, because I started to realize we do this throughout our lives for all sorts of reasons. And we all know this thing, that we have certain ideas about ourselves, that I'm this, I'm Thomas, and I'm from Denmark, and I do this, and this is my style of yoga, this is what I do, and I react like this in certain situations. And then we all know, because we've all been in situations where all of a sudden we've been pushed out of our comfort zone, and we've had to react either to help somebody or to, we had to react to somebody else's whatever. And we reacted in a way that was not how we perceived ourselves. And I think when we get to adulthood in our lives, we all had some kind of experiences where things like that have happened. Once we realize that all of these things, we have these endless possibilities, then being a teacher in that moment where you're in that role is a lot easier, because it's not like you have this sort of like huge thing that you have to lift. I mean, I used to think, oh, I can't be a teacher if I'm not living in a 100% yoga lifestyle. I have to be 100% vegetarian, and I have to do my meditations every day and my practice every day. It was just, it becomes such a minefield, doesn't it?
It really is. I think there's a blog that I wrote, and it's going to be released in a few weeks, but I think as teachers, there's so much pressure that we feel because we think we need to be a certain way. And I think this also comes back to the voice. We think we have to have a certain voice to have achieved a certain amount of, I don't know, asanas that we can do, or knowledge in general. It really distracts you from being there for your students because you're so busy with yourself and the way that you come across.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of this thing that I think that we're really battling with in our culture, especially in this sort of like Western capitalist. I mean, a friend of mine says, don't use the K word, don't use the K word. But it is true. We're kind of all indoctrinated to think that, this is better than this. And it puts so much pressure on us. And it stops us being authentic to ourselves. And when we're not authentic to ourselves, it's very hard to have a voice. The reason I talk so much about identity in relation to this thing of voice is because my experience was I did a lot of work as an actor trying to find my voice, my resonance. And there was a time when I did a lot of Shakespeare, and I kind of had this acting voice, this Shakespeare voice that was incredibly resonant, and I would speak like that, and it would all fill the room. But nobody speaks like that. It was very stilted, and it really didn't work. And part of that was that, again, it's kind of like this thing that I wasn't taking on my voice. I wasn't resonating from me. What I was saying was not coming from my heart. And it doesn't matter if you're speaking somebody else's words or if you're speaking your own words. And I think as teachers, to find our voice, we need to be able to resonate from ourselves, from our truth, whatever that is. And that doesn't have to be something lofty, you know. A truth in the moment can be, oh my God, I just done 200 hours training and I am scared to teach you guys. And I actually said that in front of the class once, you know, not 200 hours because I'd done more training at that time, but I did, you know, come in. So I say, you know what, I feel so nervous today. I really feel that I'm not scared of you guys, but I'm scared to teach you guys. And I just really hope that I can honor the fact that you have chosen to come here. And I said something along those lines, and it was just admitting that I was nervous and I was scared and I was feeling inferior. It created, like, the whole room kind of became very sympathetic, I suppose, because I was showing some vulnerability. And also it took the pressure off completely. And it kind of made me come from a place of where I was very much in my head and, you know, talking from knowledge points or, you know, things I read and things that I kind of felt were the right things to say, to just being able to resonate from my truth, because that was my truth in that moment.
Exactly. I think that's a very, very important point. I think as teachers, we have to allow ourselves to be vulnerable, allow ourselves to make mistakes, allow ourselves to just be the same as your students or the same as the people that are in your class, because you're all there for, let's say, a yogic experience. There's no one better better than the other. And being vulnerable or allowing yourself to be vulnerable is super, super important. Really good point. So, like, finding your voice, it's a really big thing. And you already mentioned you have to speak from your authentic self or from your true self. But how can you find out if you are speaking from your true self? Imagine you've just finished your 200 hours, or you've been teaching for a while and you're still trying new things. What are some things that you can do?
I mean, I wish I had like a clear cut, like.
I know it's a very difficult question.
I think because it is one of these things, and I know we keep saying this in yoga, that it's like a life journey, and finding your voice is a life journey as well.
Yeah.
And I think even when you listen to, you know, people that are gurus or, you know, supposedly have found their voice and their truth or whatever, I think you still find that when they will tell you that they still, you know, have moments when they struggle and, you know, rely on other people's words or other people's wisdom. For me, it's really about resonance. I feel that it's not so much about saying the right words. I think when we get caught up in saying the right words, then things get really scary and really difficult. Quite often, you say things, and I think if, you know, those of us who teach and stand in front of people, I know that we all been in this situation where we know after we say some things, like I say, that doesn't make sense, you know, the sense of that, and yet people have understood what you said. You know, we all had that experience, I think. And the reality is that it's very much, I think we communicate more from our hearts than we do from our mouth. And when we speak and we resonate, it's more about the resonance that our voice gives out than the actual words. So I find that what really helps me are vocal exercises where I'm working with resonance in the body and feeling resonance in the body. And the simplest one is the Om. You know, we all, I'm assuming, you know, it's hard to do a teacher training without getting in contact with it's also one of these things that I could really, it's one of my pet hates in like modern fitness yoga when you're teaching in gyms and they say, oh, don't go on because it will alienate people or it will, you know. And I'm kind of like, well, for me, it's such an essential part. Now, because with the if you're breaking it down, you're doing the ah and the oh, and you notice the resonance sits different in the body, and you can feel that. Simply just working with that, and one of the simplest exercises I do to find a resonance in my body is simply just going on over and over again, and just really pay attention to where do I feel vibrations in my body, where do I feel my voice vibrating. Now, when we first start working with voice and vocal work, and I know this from personal experience, when I first started doing that, I was incredibly tense in my body, and and people would say, oh, make it resonate through your feet, and I was just like, wow. I literally did not feel any vibration of my voice anywhere whatsoever. There wasn't any breath, because my body was so tense and so uptight, and so my voice was kind of here, and it was like barely resonating in my head. And of course, if that's the stage that we're at, then finding relaxation, finding freedom in our bodies, and therefore in the resonate is also really important work. And I think in that, I actually found that the most effective thing, and this is doing 3 years of classical theatre training, doing all sorts of voice workshops, and still being this kind of like talking head with no body resonance. And I found that the one thing that really, really helped me was, and this is for me personal, it's going to be different for everybody, was strong vinyasa practice with ujjayi breathing. And that's not necessarily something that relaxes you, but it was something that gave me freedom in my body and freedom in my breath. And it started teaching my body that my ribs can move. So vibration and breath, I would say, if you want to boil it down to what makes your voice resonant, and that's sort of like, it's vibration and breath. And beyond that, it's really about, do you resonate with what you're talking about? And I think that's really the essential thing. I think it doesn't really matter if we have a strong voice, if we have a very heady voice. It doesn't matter what kind of, we all have different personalities, we all have different voices, we all have different sounds. Even a very non-resonant voice has a resonance. It has a sound. And there will be somebody out there that really needs to hear that specific voice. And it may be really unconfident, and it may be really kind of like not what we recognize a true sort of like carrying voice to be. But there will be somebody out there that really needs to hear those words spoken by that voice. And I think these messages are really about what we communicate. I mean, when we're speaking about the things that we're passionate about the things that we believe in, I think then we start resonating with our personal truth. And it doesn't have to be like a finished formula or a thesis, or that we understand this. I think the reason that we're drawn to teaching yoga is because we find something that we're passionate about. And when we talk about that, we feel that we're communicating something. And even if you're struggling with finding words, or if you're struggling with finding the right language, the fact that you're talking about something that you're passionate about will lead you towards talking about your truth. And then the journey is kind of like, the more you do it, the more you find this is where you come to, this is where you, now after 10 years of teaching, I have certain go-to things that I know that if I'm having a really off day and I'm really in my head and I can't connect to my class and I feel, oh my God, I'm just not really with it, there's certain things that I know that if I talk about that, it will kind of like bring me in. It will gravitate me towards, something that's a little bit more authentic.
Absolutely.
And because I've done it for 10 years, there's a few things that I can use. When I first started, there was like one thing, I kind of like, say, okay, when I just really can't figure it out, then I go talk a little bit about that, and then that will sort of like get you going. But I think, again, it comes back to this thing, and I think as teachers, it can't be said enough that it comes back to this thing that we all are individuals. we are connected to a greater oneness, and that's what we're talking about, and that's what the yoga is. But we all come to it with our individual vibration, and our voice, however small, however, is important, and it will make all the difference for that one person. And I really do think that it always comes back to that, because it's so easy to devalue ourselves and devalue what we have to say. And once we do that, that really undermines the resonance in our voice and the truth in our voice, because it's hard to believe that if we don't.
Exactly. I think all of this, what you said, really relates to the fear a lot of teachers have when they just come out of training, and they also think like, well, who's going to come to my classes? They don't need me. There's so many other teachers out there already. And this really speaks to those that I'm blanking. I'm sorry. I'm just listening and like agree. I don't need to say anything really. Yes, it really speaks to those that believe that they don't need to be there because there's so many teachers out there already. Yeah.
And I think I just want to pick up on what just happened, because that was kind of like what we were talking about, what I was mentioning before. It's exactly that thing that you're in the middle of the flow, you know what you're saying, then something happens, your mind goes somewhere else. And the fact that you say, I'm blanking, it's kind of like, yes, that's your truth. That's your truth in that moment. I completely forgot what I'm going to say, but you still said what you need to say. And I think that it's such a beautiful thing when those things happen, those little moments. And I think, yes, you're right. I think, when you're coming out and you're new, it is really daunting, and it's natural that you're going to have all these doubts and fears. And I always say to people, and I think it was true for me, and I think it's true for a lot of people, that the best thing you can do when you're a new teacher is don't worry about, I know all the marketing people and stuff, they will talk forever about finding your niche and, doing your social media and all this sort of like thing to attract your tribe and all of these things. And I would say, don't worry about that when you first come out. Just teach your friends, teach your families, do whatever you need to do, get in front of people, communicate with people in the way, and find the way that you want to teach. And then you will also start to find where you find the most resonance, where you find the most enjoyment. Some people will find that when they're talking about anatomy and alignment, they get really alive because maybe that's really what they're passionate about. And some people find maybe it's more in the esoteric. And this is how we start finding our speciality in an organic way. And I think if we want to find a niche, and if we want to be these sort of like successful marketeers, which by the way, I'm absolutely not, then it comes from that. It comes from finding this, what we're passionate about, finding our speciality, finding what is kind of unique to us. And the uniqueness comes in our passion. And that really is just about doing it and getting in front of people and talking. And then these things will start to emerge in a very organic way. So the best thing you can do as a new teacher is take the pressure off. Teach people where you kind of like feel, okay, well, it's okay. There's no pressure. And then when you feel that you're ready, then step in. And once in a while, I mean, I remember my like paid studio class. And that was a real leap, because you're going from being, in front of people that you feel comfortable with, and and that even if you fuck everything up, they're still gonna like you because you're mates and all that. And then all of a sudden you're in front of a room full of strangers who have paid to be there, and that was really scary. And then you kind of like realize that actually they're just like your friends. They come because they're looking for something and they want whatever they want. Everybody has a different reason for being there. And people really don't go to a yoga class to judge the teacher.
No.
It's not.
Very good point.
Maybe some people do, but that really is their problem if they do.
Yes, that's their own material, probably.
Yeah.
Exactly. These are amazing points. I completely agree with everything you say. Now, as a student, I always like to hear what I should do or what I could do, or just get inspiration of things to evaluate or discover about myself and my teaching style. But what are maybe some things that aren't very helpful? We already mentioned, like, take off the pressure. Are there other things that we could leave behind?
There's probably a lot of things we can leave behind, I think. I'm reading a lot of Mark Whitwell at the moment, and I'm following his Instagram account. And he's a teacher I connected with in India many years ago, and now, you know, with the whole online renaissance, he's accessible to me. I don't have to travel to the other side of the world to go to his classes, and he's really resonating. And this is really going back to Krishnamacharya's Tantra teachings, which, as Western yoga teachers, I think if we examine our lineage, we all go back to Krishnamacharya, because at somewhere in our lineage, we will either have B.K.S. Iyengar or Patabi Joyce, or one of Krishnamacharya's students will be not more than a few steps back from whoever we train with or whoever our teachers are. So I think Krishnamacharya, for most people, I mean, there's a few exceptions to this, of course. So I think one of the really important things to start leaving behind for me at the moment is this thing of duality, this thing of hierarchy, this thing of thinking of masculine versus feminine, active versus passive. It's kind of like the yin and the yang exist, they coexist at the same point, and they only exist because of each other. It's starting to see more about the unity. I think when we separate things out, then, you know, and we sort of like say, oh, this is a yang practice, or this is a yin practice, or this becomes difficult to justify, because you always sort of like end up in this area of trying to find a balance that you actually don't have to look for, because the balance is inherent in our existence. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to leave behind at the moment. But it's, as you can say, I'm struggling with it in my head. I know in my heart, I know what it is, but when I try to put words on it, my head goes, make no sense.
Exactly. I think it's a concept we need to unlearn, rather. It's something that we have grown up thinking that that's the way it is. It's either black or white, light or heavy, but there is no real difference between it. There's always this balance within you.
Yeah. I think the real sort of like departure here is kind of like this idea that we have to go somewhere, that we have to be something that we're not already. Now, if yoga is union with the self, to the self, and, you know, to everything else, then we already are that. And it, you know, it comes through a lot. It comes through in a lot of meditation teachings, and you have to let go of something or do something to arrive at something, to be something different, to become something different. And the reality that this thing that we're trying to become, we already are. The separation is the illusion. We're already unified. We are already one. It's the illusion that makes us think that we're not. It again goes back to be a theme for this conversation, really, doesn't it? That we're not enough. When in fact we are everything. We are everything that we need to be. We are everything that we could want to be. And whatever you need in this situation right here, right now, is available to you. It's an immensely liberating realization to have. And also the opposite, that sort of like feeling of, oh yeah, but I just need to strive here. If I can do the perfect handstand, I would be, you know, it's kind of like...
We've all been there.
I mean, I'm all for, I'm working like mad for the last 10 years to get the perfect handstand, and I'm, you know, still using the board and all sorts of things. I'm all for, you know, challenging myself, trying things out, but have fun with it. And it's not about competition that we create with ourselves. We all know about competition in the studio and looking at other people and thinking I'm not as good as that girl over there because she's amazing and her legs are behind her ears. And I mean, that's one way of competition, but it's also the competition we make with ourselves. It's the like thing, oh my God, I've been practicing this for so long and I'm just not getting anywhere. And it's usually when we start having fun and just enjoy what we're doing, that's when we actually make progress. And we start, because we allow ourselves to be something different. We allow ourselves to go somewhere else. And that can be in a physical sense or in a mental sense or in a confidence sense, feeling more at ease with ourselves.
Absolutely. Letting go of the pressure. That's beautiful. It reminds me of an interview I heard not long ago about this girl. She went to I think it was an Ashtanga class. I've never really practiced it, but you've got different levels, right? Yes. And she went to this class and there were a lot of people that are pretty advanced. And let's say they were level 3 or maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3. I don't know enough about it to speak about levels. But she said they were really advanced and they were, before the practice, showing off all the postures and asanas they could get into. And there was this one man meditating and just sitting still, really just getting prepared or tuning into the moment to start his practice. And in the end, that was the person that was obviously the most advanced of all of them, because he didn't feel the need to show off or to be someone or to prove that he could do certain things in front of the others.
Yeah, Mark Whitwell talks a lot about these dynamics in yoga as well, from when Krishnamacharya kind of like went to Tibet to resurrect the tantras. Yoga in its purest form, in this sort of like thing where yoga is a union between the masculine and the feminine, had been dead in India for about 400 years, and you had to go back sort of like pre-1400 to find a time when yoga was practiced sort of like as a common thing, and it wasn't like a hierarchy of, you know, some people being higher up or more advanced yogis than other yogis, and you know, where it was just like something that everybody practiced because it was a part of day-to-day life and a way of life. And he talks a lot about what happened in all of the world as a global thing, that the world became very male-dominated and very hierarchical. Is that a word?
I think it makes sense.
As long as you know what I mean. Yeah, so it kind of like became all this is better than that. It became very sort of like masculine.
Like stereotypes, maybe.
Yeah, it kind of took the yoga out of yoga in a way that it made it less about union. And we see it a lot in a lot of the typical thing that people say about religion is, if God is in all of us, then why do we need an intermediary? Why do we need a priest in order to connect to God if he's inside, if it's a concept that's in all of us? And I think there's a lot of this sort of like narrative that came into yoga as well, where the divine became something that was separate from us. And in that, you build a hierarchy, because then you will have somebody who's closer to it and somebody who's further away. Of course, that's not reality. I forgot why I started talking about that, but there was something to do with it.
That's the thing, when you speak about these topics, there's just so many things that come to mind, because it all relates, it all belongs to this union, and everything comes back in different principles and concepts. So it's normal. I understand. I'm like that too. Are there any other things that you want to mention that people can try, or maybe resources to read or to watch?
Well, the other thing that I find is really helpful and it's really fun as well is things like Kirtan. One of my first teachers that I stuck with forever and did my first teacher training with her, she was a Kirtan. And I absolutely love that whole concept. The way Kirtan is practiced is in yoga is tied into that contact culture, and it's a very natural step. But I really think any kind of like group singing, what I really like about the Kirtan is there's a freedom to it, because you got the call and response. So you don't really have to learn anything. You know, there's somebody who sings what you're supposed to sing, and then you repeat after them. And you do it as a group, so you kind of like feel free and you resonate with the rest of the group, and the energy really builds up. If you're working with voice and you're looking for voice, it's a really useful thing to do. Kirtan may not be for everybody. It may not resonate for everybody. For me, I love it. But it could also be like it could be a gospel choir. It could be going to church and singing psalms. It could be singing along to your favorite tracks. But I do think there's something about human beings getting together in a group and making sounds with their voices in unison or in resonating together. That's extremely powerful. It's very powerful for our connection to our voice, and it's very powerful for our feeling of community and our resonance to truth. So
exactly.
I definitely want to plug that.
I really like it too. Just for the people that don't know, could you quickly explain what Kirtan is? We might know gospel or choirs, but what is Kirtan?
Well, Kirtan is, I suppose, sort of like the yogic interpretation of gospel, except I think it predates gospel by quite a lot. Traditionally, it's done around sacred mantras, and some of them are neutral, some of them are very much connected into the deities that we know from Hinduism and, the Durga Ma and the Ganesha and stuff like that. So you have a lot of different mantras that are used. Some of them are a little bit less connected to specific. So you've got mantras like Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, which is basically just peace to all beings. May everybody everywhere find peace. And so there's a whole array of mantras out there, and they're put to music. And the way a kirtan will work is that you will have your leader, the person that leads the kirtan, somebody sitting with a harmonium, and they will sing the phrase, and then the group or the audience or whatever you want to will repeat that phrase, and you repeat it again, and you sort of like go over and over and over. Usually the mantras, they might be broken up in like 3 or 4 sections. So you have 3 or 4 different little melodies, and then you go over and over those again. And you literally can do that for hours and hours. And sometimes the energy really builds up and everything gets really frantic and ecstatic, and and sometimes it gets really mellow and chilled out. But basically it's call and response. That's really what it is. So you express something out and then response back in. I mean, I'm not actually on authority to speak about this at all. It's just something that I loved and enjoyed, and this is my experience. This is how I experienced it over the years. So if anyone out there are kirtan experts and want to correct me on anything that I'm saying, please do. Please send me.
Really, really, really nice and so useful. So useful. Where can we find you, Thomas? Because you've got a lot going on as well. We want to know where you are and what you're up to.
I'm at greatdaneyoga.com. That's my website, and all my online classes are there. And I run mainly classes, and I will continue, even when we come out of lockdown, these classes will continue to be online, because I'm trying to connect to the whole world, not just London. So I'm based in London. So my online things are mainly Wednesday. I got classes lunchtime, evening, and I got lunchtime on Thursdays as well. And I do a morning full on hour and a half practice on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. I also do some classes through Naomi De Fabio. So I do a yin class on Sunday afternoon, evening at 5 o'clock through her, and a vinyasa class through her on Tuesday evening. But all of that is on my website at greatdaneyoga.com. So it's difficult to remember that. Go to the website. And if you can't remember that, if you go to my Instagram profile, Great Dane Yoga, there's a link to the website. So it should be fine.
You've got no excuse.
Yeah. When we come out of lockdown, unfortunately, the London yoga scene has been decimated. So all these lovely yoga centers like Urban Souls and Recenter, where I used to teach, do not exist anymore. But I'm sure other places will come up. I am teaching at Virgin Active. So if you are a member of Virgin Active and you want to join me at Virgin Active when we get out of lockdown, look for me at Kensington, Mayfair, and Strand. And I think I'll be teaching at Moorgate as well. It's a little bit, we don't know the timetable yet. But for those of you who are in London and members of Virgin Active, that's an option. Oh, and also in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be starting for London people in my garden out here at the back on Sunday lunchtime. We're going to have an outdoor, socially distanced yoga class. And there's a little gazebo, so we can do it in the rain. Come along to that. That will be advertised on my website as well. and on Instagram.
Amazing. Thomas, thank you so much for joining today and sharing all
so
your
much.
knowledge and wisdom.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise, really. I can't wait to practice with you again. I'm going to soon book my classes.
I can't wait to have you in class, Annie. It's just always such a pleasure to have you. It's wonderful. I never thought when I went online, I never thought, oh, it's going to be like speaking to a computer screen, but you actually do feel the energy of the people that are there and practicing, even if you only see the little screen. And it's such a wonderful, wonderful thing to be able to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like we said, if you have questions, don't hesitate just reaching out, sending a private message or an email. You know where to find us, and we'll make sure that you get an answer to your question.
Definitely. Thank you all guys for coming along. Great to see you all, and I look forward to connecting with you out there in the world or in the online.
Absolutely. All right. I will see you later, Thomas. Thank you again.
See you later. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
You listen to Your Yoga in English, brought to you by Enga Unite, a unique online learning platform for non-native English-speaking yogis and yoga teachers. If you feel inspired and liked what you learned today, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and follow us at Enga Unite and become a member of our online community, Your Yoga in English, on Facebook. Practice, rest, repeat, and all will come.